If you watched part 1, you already know your brain doesn't really care whether it's a drug, a like notification, or a slot machine. Same circuits, same chemistry, different packaging. Part 2 goes further. Some of these you've heard of, some you've never once thought of as an addiction. One of them is probably in your medicine cabinet right now. And at least one is going to describe someone you know a little too well, or maybe yourself. 10 more. Like and subscribe if this is your kind of content, and stay until the end. Number 10 is the one nobody talks about. Let's go. Video game addiction. Not because games are bad, but because modern games are engineered deliberately by teams of behavioral psychologists to be incredibly hard to put down. The core mechanism is variable reward scheduling. You don't get a reward every time you do something. You get it sometimes, unpredictably. That unpredictability is exactly what makes it more compelling than a fixed reward. Same reason a slot machine is more addictive than a vending machine. Add progression loops, XP, level ups, loot boxes, and your brain gets a constant drip of small dopamine hits that feel like real achievement. Add a social layer, guilds, rankings, leaderboards, and now you're not just chasing dopamine. You're chasing identity and belonging inside a world that was built to give you both on demand. The game ends, the loop doesn't, because the next level is always one more session away. That's not a side effect, that's the point. It's not addictive. You've heard this. A lot of people believe it. It's also not quite accurate. Around 9% of people who use cannabis regularly develop cannabis use disorder. That number jumps to 17% for people who start in their teens when the brain's endocannabinoid system is still being built. Those aren't small numbers. Here's the mechanism. THC floods your cannabinoid receptors over time, and your brain responds by downregulating its own endocannabinoid production. The natural system your brain uses to regulate mood, sleep, and anxiety becomes dependent on the external supply. When the supply stops, the system doesn't bounce back immediately. Modern cannabis makes this significantly worse. Average THC content has climbed from around 4% in the 1990s to 12 to 25% and above today. The anxiety, insomnia, and emotional flatness people feel when they try to stop after long-term heavy use, that's not weakness. That's a withdrawal pattern from a brain that lost its self-regulation. And Ningle the it's natural, so it's fine logic hasn't kept up with what's actually in the product now. Love addiction. Early-stage romantic love and cocaine activate the same regions of the brain. Not a metaphor that's the result of fMRI studies by researcher Helen Fisher at Rutgers. Dopamine surges, norepinephrine spikes, serotonin drops. Together, the combination feels a lot like being high, because neurologically, it kind of is. For most people, that phase fades as a relationship stabilizes. For people with love addiction, that fading feels like the relationship dying, so they leave. Or they manufacture drama to recreate the intensity. Or they start the cycle over with someone new, not because they're commitment phobic, but because their brain is chasing a specific chemical state, not a specific person. Breakups for love addicts don't just hurt emotionally. Brain scans show they activate the same areas as opioid withdrawal. That's not being dramatic, that's documented. The craving, the obsession, the physical discomfort, it maps directly. This one surprises people every time. Drop a comment if it resonated or if you know someone this describes. Keep watching. Prescription stimulant, Adderall, Ritalin, Vivance. Genuinely helpful for people with ADHD, and increasingly used by people without it in universities, open plan offices, anywhere productivity is the currency of survival. The mechanism is close to cocaine. Both increase dopamine availability in the brain, both produce a state of sharper focus and energy. The main difference is onset speed cocaine hits in seconds. Amphetamines take 30 to 45 minutes. That slower onset makes the psychological drug association weaker, which is part of why misuse creeps in quietly without drama. Over time, the brain adjusts. It produces less dopamine on its own. Without the stimulant, basic focus becomes difficult not because of ADHD, but because the brain has recalibrated around the pill being there. The line between I need this because I have a condition and I need this because I'm dependent gets genuinely blurry, and that ambiguity is part of what makes this one hard to address. Okay, this next one. Nobody sees it coming. Anger addiction. When you get properly angry, your body releases adrenaline and cortisol. Heart rate goes up, focus sharpens, you feel powerful, certain, and righteous. That's a real physiological high, not a metaphor. For people who feel powerless or unheard in daily life, anger becomes the one emotion that reliably produces that feeling of control. And like any high, the brain starts to want it again. Pattern matching shifts. Things that wouldn't have triggered a reaction before now do. The threshold drops. You're not choosing to be angry more often. Your brain has started generating reasons. This is why some people always have something to be outraged about. A new grievance every week, a new reason the world is against them. It might not be a personality type. It might be a loop that's been running so long it feels like identity. Still watching? Good. The next few are the ones that really surprise people. Subscribe so you don't miss part 3 when it drops. Benzodiazepines. Prescribed by doctors. Available at pharmacies. Used by millions for anxiety, panic, and sleep. And one of the hardest physical dependencies to break in modern medicine. What makes benzos different from most substances is the severity of what happens when you stop. Physical withdrawal from benzodiazepines can cause seizures. It can be life-threatening. Opioid withdrawal is genuinely agonizing, but it rarely directly kills an otherwise healthy person. Benzo withdrawal can. That's why medical supervision for detox isn't optional, it's a clinical necessity. The dependency forms fast. A few weeks of regular use is enough for the brain to recalibrate its GABA system, the brain's primary braking mechanism around the drug being present. Stop suddenly, and the rebound is severe. What makes this particularly difficult? Most people who become dependent didn't misuse the drug. They took it as prescribed. The problem developed quietly, in a completely sanctioned medical context. By the time it's visible, stopping without help isn't just hard, it's medically dangerous. Work addiction. The only one on this list that gets you promoted. Achievement triggers dopamine. Deadlines trigger cortisol and adrenaline stress hormones that, in the short term, produce a feeling of urgency and purpose that's genuinely hard to replicate any other way. When your identity becomes I am someone who works hard and delivers, the work becomes tied to self-worth at a level that makes stopping feel like disappearing. What separates a strong work ethic from work addiction is what happens when you stop. People with a healthy drive can put work down and be okay. Workaholics experience real anxiety, irritability, and a low-level sense of meaninglessness when they're not working the same profile as withdrawal from other dependencies. The social invisibility is what makes this one dangerous. The people around you reinforce it. Your employer rewards it. There's rarely a moment where someone says this is a problem, until the health crisis, the burnout, or the relationships that disappeared while you were heads down and didn't notice. MDMA. This one works differently from almost everything else on the list. MDMA triggers a simultaneous release of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine while also elevating oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding and trust. The result is a feeling of deep connection and warmth that most people describe as unlike anything they've felt before. That feeling is real. The chemistry behind it is real. What makes MDMA uniquely addictive is that people don't crave the drug itself. They crave the feeling of being genuinely connected to other people openly without self-consciousness, which is something many find almost impossible to access in regular life. The substance becomes a shortcut to something the brain desperately wants but can't reliably produce on its own. With repeated use, the serotonin system sustains damage, specifically the transporters that regulate availability. Emotional baseline drops. The come down after each use gets harder. The capacity for natural happiness, calm, and connection narrows. What started as feeling more alive ends in a system that struggles to feel much at all. Which one on this list has surprised you the most so far? Drop it in the comments, genuinely curious. Cocaine. The mechanism is fast and direct. Cocaine blocks the reuptake of dopamine, flooding the synapse with it. The high arrives in under a minute. Confidence, clarity, energy compressed into a single moment. Then the drop. And the drop is steep because dopamine doesn't just return to baseline, it falls below it. The only short-term fix for that deficit is more. Methamphetamine takes this further. It doesn't just block reuptake, it forces the active release of dopamine from storage, producing an intensity and duration the brain was never designed to handle. The damage is structural. Repeated meth use causes measurable changes to dopaminergic neurons that show up on brain scans. The reward system that processed motivation, pleasure, and drive is physically altered. These aren't moral failures wrapped in dramatic stories. They're among the most powerful neurochemical events a human brain can experience, against which willpower, as a standalone tool, doesn't have much of a chance. And this last one is the one nobody talks about. Some people's nervous systems have been calibrated usually through prolonged stress, unstable environments, or difficult early experiences to a high arousal state as their default. When stress is your baseline for long enough, calm stops feeling safe. It feels wrong, like the quiet before something bad happens. So the brain fills it, not consciously. You find yourself in arguments that didn't need to happen, relationships that keep imploding, situations that somehow always become crises, and a strange low-level discomfort during the rare stretches when everything is genuinely okay. This isn't drama for its own sake. It's a nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do, returning to the arousal state it knows as normal. It's not a character flaw. It's a learned pattern running on autopilot. Recognizing it is genuinely hard, because from the inside, it just looks like bad luck. And because tolerating calm long enough for the nervous system to learn it's actually safe, that's real work. The kind that usually needs support to do. Part 2. 10 more loops the brain gets caught in and why just stop rarely touches the actual mechanism. These videos aren't here to make you feel judged about what you're drawn to. They're here to give you an accurate picture of what's actually happening underneath. Because you can't have a real choice about something until you understand the thing pulling at you. Now you understand 10 more of them a little better. Tell me in the comments, which one from this list hit closest to home? Or is there something you think should be in part 3? I read every comment, and I'm genuinely building the next list from what people say. Like, if this was worth your time, subscribe for part 3. See you there.